ब्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीरा वनचारि यमुना तीरा वनचारि जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी जय गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीरा वनचारि यमुना तीरा वनचारि जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा श्रील प्रभुपादा जय ओम विश्वपाद परमहंस परिव्राजक स्तोत्र सदस्य श्रीमद् स्वयं शिष्य भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। इस्कॉन संस्थापक श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विश्वपाद परमहंस परिव्राजक स्तोत्र सदस्य श्रीमद् भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विश्वपाद गौर किशोरदास महाराज की जय। जय ओम सच्चिदानंद भक्तिविनोद ठाकुर की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद वैष्णव सार्वभौम श्री जगन्नाथ दास महाराज की जय। जय श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भट्टदास रघुनाथ षट गोस्वामी प्रभु की जय। नमस्ते हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कौशिक कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ हम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरिवर्धन की जय। श्री श्री गौरांगी बेंगलोर ईश्वर भगवान की जय। श्री मायापुर धाम की जय। वृंदावन धाम की जय। गंगा माई की जय। यमुना माई की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। तुलसी देवी की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। इस्कॉन रत्मान गुरुवंद की जय। समाज भक्ति की जय। गौरव प्रेमानंद हरि हरि all glories to the assembled Lord. All glories to the assembled Lord. All glories to the assembled Lord. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Sri Prabhupada की जय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtaprayeshu Patreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamasloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtihi. Hare Krishna. Welcome you all to the Friday morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today we're discussing from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 11, Text 14. Samprasanne Bhagavati Purusha Prakrite Kunai Vimukto Jiva Nirmukto Brahma Nirvanam Richati. Samprasanne Bhagavati Purusha Prakrite Gunai Vimukto Jiva Nirmukto Brahma Nirvanam Richati. Samprasanne Bhagavati Purusha Prakrite Gunai Vimukto Jiva Nirmukto Brahma Nirvanam Richati. Translation Srila Prabhupada ki jai. One who actually satisfies the Supreme Personality of Godhead during one's lifetime becomes liberated from the gross and subtle material conditions. Thus, being freed from all material modes of nature, he achieves unlimited spiritual bliss. In the previous verse, it has been explained that one should treat all living entities with tolerance, mercy, friendship, and equality. By such behavior, one satisfied the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and upon his satisfaction, the devotee immediately becomes free from all material conditions. The Lord also confirms this in the Bhagavad Gita. Anyone who sincerely and seriously engages in my service immediately becomes situated in the transcendental stage wherein he can enjoy unlimited spiritual bliss. Everyone in this material world is struggling hard, to achieve blissful life. Unfortunately, people do not know how to achieve it. Achieve it. Atheists do not believe in God, and certainly they do not please Him. Here it is clearly said that upon pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one immediately attains to the spiritual platform and enjoys unlimited blissful life. To become free from material existence means to become free from influence of material nature. The word samprasanne, which is used in this verse, means being satisfied. A person should act in such a way that the Lord is satisfied by the activity. It is not that he himself is to be satisfied. Of course, when the Lord is satisfied, the devotee automatically becomes satisfied. This is the secret of the process of Bhakti Yoga. Outside of Bhakti Yoga, everyone is trying to satisfy himself. No one is trying to satisfy the Lord. Karmis grossly try to satisfy their senses, but even those who are elevated to the platform of knowledge also try to satisfy themselves in a subtle form. Karmis try to satisfy themselves by sense gratification, and jnanis try to satisfy themselves by subtle activities or mental speculation and thinking themselves to be God. Yogis also try to satisfy themselves by thinking that they can achieve different mystic perfections. But only devotees try to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The devotee's process of self realization is completely different from the processes of karmis, jnanis, and yogis. Everyone else is trying to satisfy himself, whereas the devotee tries only to satisfy the Lord. The devotional process is completely different from the others. By working to please the Lord, by engaging his senses in the Lord's loving service, a devotee is immediately situated on the transcendental platform and he enjoys unlimited blissful life. ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुर्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सकलरघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधो जगतपते गोपिशा गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुष्टे देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये पंचकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्यश्च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवशादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So here we see that there is a big battle between Dhruva Maharaj and the Yakshas. And at that time, we see that Dhruva Maharaj has been killing many yakshas, and Swayambhuva Manu comes and advises Dhruva Maharaj to come and to stop fighting because it's not authorized to kill many yakshas instead of just one. And then in this instruction, in this verse, Swayambhuva Manu is telling Dhruva Maharaj that one who actually satisfies the Supreme Personality of Godhead during one's lifetime becomes liberated from the gross and subtle material conditions. And being free from all material modes of nature, he achieves unlimited spiritual bliss. So from the previous verses, we take forward one point that is where Srila Prabhupada explains, translation also is given, that one should treat all the living entities with tolerance, mercy, friendship, and equality. That means it is not that we only treat human beings only properly or even just treat the devotees properly, but all the living entities uh, have to be treated with tolerance, mercy, friendship, and equality. By doing so, the Lord also becomes pleased. And when the Lord becomes pleased, then the devotee automatically becomes free from all material conditions. In fact, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakura also, in his quotes, there is a mention as to how one should respect all the living entities and not find fault with any of the forms of living entities, because sometimes we may try to degrade some others as an insect or a animal or so forth. But then Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakura says that all the living entities are rather the forms of the living beings are given by the Lord, and so we cannot find fault with those living beings. Also, we might use them in our classes as an example, but then we don't condemn these species because they are all creations of the Lord. So when one treats all the living beings with these four factors, that is, one is tolerance, we should be very tolerant. One should be merciful to these living beings. Then one should treat them with friendship and then with equality also. That means they are all one and the same, except that the forms are different. In fact, the Lord tells Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita itself, Vidyavinaya Sampane Brahmanika Vestine Tuni Cheva Swapagecha Pandita Samadarshinaha. That means a Brahmana is with knowledge is one, who treats all the living beings on one platform, whether it's a cow or any other animals also. Now here we see that when one does this, the Lord becomes pleased, and then when the Lord is pleased, the devotee is situated in a Brahma platform, that Brahman platform. That is, he is not conditioned anymore in material by the three modes of material nature, and he lives in a blissful platform. So the point is that how can one satisfy the Lord? One can satisfy the Lord by situating himself in devotional service for the satisfaction of the Lord. One should not perform devotional service even for one's own self-satisfaction. Many times what happens is that many might perform devotional service, but then they might try to put themselves in the forefront, trying to exhibit themselves as the cause of devotional service also. It is not so, because even if we are performing what to talk of spiritual activities, even on a material platform, material activities cannot be performed without the mercy of the Lord. So spiritual activities, definitely, whether one is speaking on the glories of the Lord or one is singing on the glories of the Lord, they cannot be done without the costless mercy of the Lord. So when one does this without any sense, personal motive, then the Lord becomes pleased with such a devotee's devotional service. Now we'll take some examples. There is an example given in Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto, where there is this thing given about Swayambhuva Manu's other son, Priyavrata's dynasty. There was a king called Gaya. Now, Priyavrata himself was a great devotee of the Lord. And this particular chapter, until now, we have discussed about Dhruva Maharaj, this thing. In the lineage of King Priyavrata, there was a great king in the name of King Gaya. So there is a mention as to how Gaya was a very great king, and he was also, I mean, most of the kings during that in that dynasty were all great devotees, and that's how they ruled the kingdoms, and that's how they were successful. And many were expansions of Lord Vishnu himself. So there's a mention in the fifth canto, 15th chapter onwards, 15th chapter, as to some qualities of King Gaya. Now, when he was born, right from that time, he was a great devotee of the Lord, and he became very, very famous and pious also. He was also the best of saintly kings. Lord Vishnu and his expansions, who are meant to protect the universe, are also situated in the transcendental mode of goodness known as Vishuddha Sattva. That means uh, when one reaches the transcendental platform, that is even above the mode of goodness, that is called Vishuddha Sattva. And this king Gaya was already situated in that Vishuddha Sattva, and is also an expansion of Lord Vishnu. So that is why he was also situated in this Vishuddha Sattva. And because of this, it is said that Maharaj Gaya was fully equipped with transcendental knowledge, and therefore he was also called a Mahapurusha. Now, here there's an explanation given about who was Gaya. So the purport of Bhagwan mentioned that all there are two types of expansions. One is Swamsa, that is direct expansions of the Lord, and Vibhinamsa are the separated expansions of the Lord, like us. So a direct incarnation is called Amsa, or and whereas an incarnation from the Amsa is called Kala. And among these kalas, there are Vibhinamsas also. That is, we are called Vibhinamsa. We are called Jiva Tattvas. But those who come directly from the Lord Vishnu, they are called Vishnu Tattvas and are sometimes designated as Mahapurusha. So this king Gaya was also termed as a Mahapurusha because he was extraordinarily a great king, and that is how he, being a devotee of the Lord, he was called Mahapurusha. So it is said that King Gaya gave full protection and security to the citizens so that their personal property would not be disturbed by undesirable elements. He also saw that there was sufficient food to feed all the citizens. Now, uh, he was already a great devotee of the Lord. So, but then he performed all these duties as a king, which was required to be done, because king means a kshatriya. Kshatriya means to protect not only the citizens but all the living entities. He ensured that uh, there was sufficient food to feed all the citizens. This thing is called activity is called porshana. Then he would sometimes distribute gifts to the citizens to satisfy them, and this is called prinana. Then he would sometimes call meetings and satisfy the citizens with secret words. This is called upalalana. He would also give them good instructions on how to become first class citizens. This is called anushasana. So that means a king's duty is not just to collect taxes, but also perform all these duties by giving them sufficient food and then calling for meetings and talking to them nice, sweet words, and to ensure that they all become good citizens. It is mentioned that was the characteristic of this King Gaya. Besides all this, King Gaya was also a householder who strictly observed the rules and regulations of household life. That means, as a king, he performed his dharma. At the same time, he performed all the rules and regulations of his household life also. Then he performed sacrifices and was an unalloyed, pure devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, because of that, he was called Mahapurusha. And as a king, he gave the citizens all the facilities. And as a householder, he executed all his duties so that at the end, he became a great devotee of the Lord. Now, here we must understand because when a king provides all the facilities to his citizens and advises them with nice, pleasing words, and also exhibits himself, his activities in such a way, that being a great devotee of the Lord, that his citizens also will follow the same thing. And as a devotee, he was ready to give respect to other devotees also to engage in devotional service of the Lord. So he being a great king and being an exemplary king, by setting his examples, he engaged all the devotees also in the devotional service of the Lord. And this is what is called a real Bhakti Yoga process. And because of all these transcendental activities, Gaya was free from the bodily uh, conception of life. He became situated in the Brahman realization, which is what mentioned in this purport also, that when one acts on a transcendental platform, that is Vishuddha Sattva, he becomes situated on the Brahman platform, that is free from the uh, modes of material nature, and is also situated in bliss. This bliss is something that by engaging in the devotion service, one achieves that Brahman platform. He attains a state of bliss which is far higher than the happiness, far higher than the happiness that one realizes in this material world, which is a temporary one. So he was always jubilant and blissful. He did not experience any material lamentation, and though he was perfect in all respects, he was not proud, nor was he anxious to rule the kingdom. See, I mentioned in the beginning of the class, from the purport, that one has to perform his activities, whether material or spiritual. In fact, one has to spiritualize all his activities with to satisfy the Supreme Lord. That's the whole purport of this verse. And by satisfying the Supreme Lord, then he also becomes satisfied and he becomes situated in the Brahman platform. So, since the king is a representative of the Supreme Lord, he is also called a Naradeva, that is a Lord as a human being and as a king also. So, according to Vedic injunctions, he is worshipped as God on the material platform. So, even as though he may be on the material platform, he is worshipped as God, but he is not considered as God. So, as a representative of the Supreme Lord, the king had the duty to protect the citizens in a perfect way so that they would not be anxious for food and protection, and so that they would be jubilant. Now, if a person does not get his necessities of like food, clothing, and shelter, they would never be happy even if they have to perform devotional service. So the king's basic duty is to provide this basic necessity infrastructure to his all citizens. And then when he preaches the principles of devotional service and then makes them devotees by his two examples, they also become devotees. Nowadays, we see that many political groups, they introduce system of free grains and free electricity and so forth. But then it stops only at that. And the consideration is also not given to keep them happy of the basic necessities, but to gain their position. So what happens is they are not able to discharge their duties as per the Shastras. So here there's a mention that the king would supply everything for their benefit, and because of this, he would levy taxes. That means the king could levy taxes on the citizens by providing all the facilities, and then levying taxes and utilizing this money for the benefit of the mankind. And if the king or government otherwise levies taxes on the citizens, he becomes responsible for the sinful activities of the citizens. So if a king does not, two things are there. One is he should provide all the basic necessities to the citizens, and then being a great devotee of the Lord, he should see that the citizens also become the devotees of the Lord. Then he can extract taxes. But if a king or government levies taxes on the citizens, otherwise he becomes responsible for the sinful activities of the citizens. So we see that even in our country, many of the leaders have been killed, and many of the other countries also, they have been either shot or stabbed, and so many things happen. This is the result of a king not ruling the kingdom as per the injunctions of the scriptures. Then there is a mention that those who are learned scholars in the histories of the Puranas eulogize and glorify King Gaya with the following. That means when a king rules like that, then the scholars and all the great Panditas and all, they glorify the king accordingly. And some examples are like King Yudhishthira, Prithu Maharaj, who ruled the citizens whereby the citizens would be happy. And then there's mention that this King Gaya, in spite of being great devotee of the Lord, he used to perform all kinds of Vedic rituals. He was highly intelligent and expert in studying all the Vedic literatures. So he used his knowledge to understand Vedic knowledge also. And he maintained the religious principles and possessed all kind of opulence. So then when one observes everything as per religious principle, then he gets all the kinds of opulence also. He was also a leader among gentlemen and a servant of the devotees. He was not looking at himself as a leader, but also he was serving the devotees. And he was totally qualified plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, the reason why we discuss all these examples in Srimad Bhagavatam is that we have to look at these examples and understand how we can apply them in our life. Then there is a mention that all the chaste and honest daughters of Maharaja Daksha, and so many names are given, whose blessings were always effective, bathed Maharaja Gaya with sanctified water. Indeed, they were very satisfied with Maharaja Gaya. So the daughters of Maharaja Daksha, at that time being satisfied by the ruling of King Gaya, they blessed him and they bathed him with sanctified water. Now, what significance this has got is mentioned here. The planet Earth personified came as cow and she delivered milk. Of course, being a great devotee of the Lord, the cow also delivered a lot of milk. And Maya Gaya was able to derive all the benefits from the earth and satisfy the desires of his citizens. And he personally had no desire. So he had no personal desire of being a king, but then he always tried to fulfill the desires of the citizens. And with these qualities, he ruled the citizens who were all compared to the calf. A cow delivers milk in the presence of her calf. Similarly, the cow or earth fulfills the desires of Maharaj Gaya, who was able to utilize all the resources of the earth to benefit his citizens. So Gaya ruled the kingdom in such a way that he utilized all the resources just to, not for his own benefit, but to benefit the citizens. And this was possible because he was bathed in sanctified water by the honest daughters of Daksha. So when the honest daughters of Daksha, they bathed him with the sanctified water, they gave him blessings. With that blessings, he was able to utilize that to rule the kingdom in the as per the Vedic injunctions. Then there is a mention that unless a king or ruler is blessed by authorities, he cannot rule the citizens satisfactorily. So that is where the importance of blessings come. From everyone. So though the good qualities of through the good qualities of the ruler, the citizens became very happy and well qualified. So the point is that King Gaya ruled in such a way that he could satisfy the Lord, whereby the citizens also became happy, and they, in return, they also blessed him. Then the next there's mentioned that although King Gaya had no personal desires for sense gratification, all his desires were fulfilled by virtue of his performance of Vedic rituals. So, being an exemplary king, he also performed Vedic rituals. And because he had no personal desire for sense gratification, all his desires were already fulfilled by performance of these rituals. And all the kings with whom Maharaja Gaya had to fight were forced to fight on religious principles. I mean, being a king is supposed to fight only on religious principles. So, with the kings with whom he fought the battles, also he ensured that they fought on religious principles, and they were very satisfied with his fighting, and they would present all good gifts to him. And similarly, all the Brahmanas in his kingdom were very satisfied with his munificent charities. So the kings are supposed to give charity to the Brahmana, and the Brahmanas, one of the duty is to accept charities and give charities. And when this happens, then the Brahmanas contributed a sixth of their pious activities for King Gaya's benefit in the next life. So we must understand from this that the king used to give in charity, and when the Brahmanas accepted that in the right perspective, without their sense gratification, that's how Brahmanas were, the yesteryears used to be. Not like the Brahmanas of today who demand some amount, certain amount of money, but the Brahmanas of those years, they were all exalted personalities filled with transcendental knowledge. And their sustenance was maintained by charity given by the kings, who also ruled the kingdom as a great king, as an Naradeva, which I mentioned. And then when this happens, the Brahmanas contribute a sixth of their pious activities for King Gaya's benefit in the next slide. So when the Brahmanas accept this, the charity, what is given by the king, they contribute back to the king a sixth of their pious activities for the king's benefit in the next life. So it is mentioned that Gaya has sometimes had to fight with many subordinate kings, but then still he fought on religious principles. In this way, the Brahmanas who perform Vedic rituals were also satisfied, and they were readily agreed to part with a part of their pious activities. So this is how the whole cycle of karma works. And they are all satisfied because of his proper administration. In other words, Maharaja Gaya satisfied the Kshatriya kings by his fighting, and also satisfied the Brahmanas by his charities. So which we see that these days it is not there. That is why neither the king is happy nor the citizens are happy. Then there is a mention that the Vaishyas were also encouraged by kind words and affectionate dealings, and due to Maharaj Gaya's constant sacrifices, the Shudras were also satisfied by sumptuous food and charity. See, every class, these Varnasrama system, every class of citizen have their duties to perform. And because Maharaja Gaya fulfilled gave sufficient food and everything in charity to the Brahmanas, and then he spoke very nicely, pleasingly to the Vaishyas, everyone was satisfied by his ruling. And this way he kept all the citizens satisfied. And there's a conclusion in this saying that when Brahmanas and saintly persons are honored, they part with their pious activities, giving them to those who honor them and render them service. So by this, what happens is that, see, our constitutional position is to render service. So when the Lord is pleased by the king's activities and the king rules as per Vedic injunctions and sets a perfect example, then he can make the citizens also the devotees of the Lord, first by giving them the basic necessities like food, shelter, and all those things. And then by his perfect example, he also preaches to become a devotee of the Lord. So this way, by dealing with all the citizens in various varnas and ashramas, he kept the citizens happy. And when he did this, then the saintly persons also shared a part of their pious activities to Maharaj Gaya for his next life. It is said that Indra used to come and become intoxicated by drinking large quantities of somarasa in his sacrifices. Not only that, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, also came and personally accepted all the sacrifices offered unto him with pure and firm devotion in the sacrificial arena. That means when King Gaya performed sacrifices, demigods used to come and enjoy those sacrifices. Lord Vishnu also used to come and personally accept these sacrifices that are offered to him with pure devotion. And this Gaya was so perfect that he satisfied all the demigods, and he satisfied Lord Vishnu. Then this is how he received blessings of the demigods and the Lord also. And when the Lord is pleased by a person's actions, automatically all the demigods, human beings, animals, birds, bees, creepers, and all the living entities, beginning from Lord Brahma, are also pleased. Because how they are pleased? Because the Lord is seated in everyone's heart as Paramatma, and he sees that all the living beings' requirements are met. And when the Lord appeared in the sacrificial arena of King Gaya, the Lord said, "I'm very pleased with your activities." The conclusion is that if one pours water to the root of a tree, then automatically all the plants, all the twigs and branches and leaves also get the water. Similarly, if one gives food to the stomach, then all the parts of the body also get nourished. So similarly, if one satisfies the Supreme Personality of Godhead with his devotional service, the Lord becomes satisfied. And all the other limbs of the Lord, like for example, other living beings like demigods, insects, animals, they are all part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. they also become happy. Now, otherwise, one can never be situated, because the Lord Himself is stated in Bhagavad Gita that Dukkalayam Asasvatam. This place is a place of distress, and the only way that we can satisfy is to perform devotional service to the Lord, by which everyone becomes um, satisfied. So when this is done, then one becomes situated on the Brahman platform. That is Brahma. Lord says, Brahma Bhutta Prasannatma na sochati na kankshati. So when one is situated, then the person does not have any lamentation and hankering. So he is situated in bliss, which is far beyond the happiness in this material world. And so there is a verse, there is a mention here that when one acts in such a way that the Lord is satisfied by the activity, then the Lord becomes pleased. It is not that he himself is to be satisfied. That means when by performing devotional service, we should not try to think that we should be satisfied, but the Lord should be satisfied. There's also quote by many sannyasis even in our sampradaya, that if one is trying to perform devotional service with the intention of achieving something material, then it is like eating the stool of a pig. That means it is true, so that if we try to perform devotional service with some aim that I must get this, I must get that, and it is like eating the stool of a pig. This process is what is called the Bhakti Yoga. And then Srila Prabhupada mentions that outside of Bhakti Yoga, there is no way that one can satisfy the Lord. Another example from the Shastras is about Srila Haridas Thakura, which everyone might have heard by now. Haridas Thakura was all the time, out of 24 hours, he was engaged 22 hours in chanting the holy name of the Lord. So with this, he pleased the Lord, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself gave the title as Nama Acharya. That means Acharya of the holy name. So when he satisfied the Lord, Haridas Thakura also became glorious to his activities. And he stated how, though he was born in a Mohammedan family, he was glorified by the Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself and all the devotees and associates of the Lord himself also. So it is said that during his time, he was even bodily, on a bodily platform, he was so attractive that those who saw him also were inspired to become devotees of the Lord. Just by his chanting, that we know the pastime that Maya Devi herself became a devotee. And this Maya Devi came to actually disturb his chanting. But by just hearing his chanting, she became a great devotee of the Lord. Similarly, the prostitute who came to disturb his chanting also became a devotee of the Lord. So the point is that physically also he was attractive enough that the people got attracted to see him his beautiful form, but they also, by hearing his chanting, they all got impetus to chant. Then there's mention that when the king actually heard about this Haridas Thakura being born in a Mohammedan family and taking up the process of chanting the holy name, and when he was informed that he's chanting the name of a Hindu god, the king himself got very happy and he wanted to arrest him. Of course, we know that he was beaten in the marketplace, he went into marketplaces, but still he was unharmed. In the sense, though he was beaten, it is said that those days the only way of punishment was beating in the marketplace in front of everybody. So Haridas Thakur, even though he was beaten in 22 marketplaces, physically, he was not affected because the Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu protected him. In fact, there is a quote in Chaitanya Bhagavata, Chaitanya Charitamrita, how the Lord covered his body and took that into his body. So this is how the Lord protects the devotee. And even at that time when he was beaten, he was always situated in that Brahman platform. So when he was taken, before this beating took place, when he was taken to the prison house, it is said that the citizens, when they heard this, they were not at all happy to hear that Haridas Thakura is going to be imprisoned. More than anything, what has happened is that the king actually arrested many pious people who were in support of Haridas Thakur. So when they were in the prison and when they heard that Haridas Thakura is going to be arrested, uh, on one sense they were unhappy, thinking that Haridas Thakura is going to be arrested. But on the other sense, that they were happy that they were going to get some association of great personality like Haridas Thakura. And when they saw him also, they became very, very happy. Not only they, when they saw, they became happy. Even the guards and everybody who brought Haridas Thakura, they also became happy. So this is the glorious position of a devotee like Haridas Thakura. The point is that when one serves the Lord without any personal motive, the Lord becomes happy and others also become happy. So this is another example from the Shastras. And there is a mention in the purport about outside of Bhakti Yoga, nobody can satisfy the Lord. Now we'll go through in this shortly before I conclude the class. Now, karmis utilize all their what they have to satisfy their senses. Uh, so even if they are elevated to the platform, now karmis utilize all their opulences, etc., to satisfy their senses. That sometimes they might say that I'm giving this to you, please give me this. And they may not take up to the process of devotional service. Also, these are called karmis. And the jnanis, they utilize the skill or intelligence given by the Lord to speculate about the Lord and think. Finally, they come to a conclusion that they are themselves God. So these are the jnanis. Then the yogis, they try to perform, I mean, the yogis actually, not the current days yoga, but the yogis of the yesteryears, they used to meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead situated in their heart. So, but the yogis process also got diluted. And in the process of performing yoga, they may fail to see the Supreme Lord, but having done some austerities for the this thing to trying to achieve the Lord, but it did not fail. They may end up getting some mystic powers, and many of them ended up just getting mystic powers, and they got stuck to it, and thereafter they had to fall down again. So karmis try to satisfy their senses, jnanis try to speculate about the Lord, and then the yogis also try to achieve this mystic power. So they cannot satisfy the Lord. So that is why they are not, all these three processes of linking with the Lord are not very fruitful. So the only process for satisfying the Lord is Bhakti Yoga, whereby one renders devotional service to the Lord. And when one renders this devotional service to the Lord without any personal motive, the Lord becomes pleased. Uh, and when the Lord is pleased, then not only the person who is performing this becomes pleased, but all the other living entities also become pleased. And the devotee is situated in a transcendental platform whereby he achieves that bliss which is far higher than the happiness in the material world by performing other activities which are momentary. Any material happiness that one tries to achieve in this material world, either by karma or jnana, even yoga as a material activity, they may give some momentary happiness, but that is also momentary, it is never eternal, it's all temporary. So they don't reach the Brahman platform, which is a platform to be achieved by devotional service in an uninterrupted and unmotivated platform. That means we don't perform devotional service with any personal motive, and one should always try to perform his activities. Like in the case of a king, Kshatriya king like Gaya, he performed every activity, even though he was a devotee of the Lord, he did not compromise on any of the activities in his service, because he did everything in the service of the Lord. And finally, what happened was during his service, the Lord became very pleased, and in fact, the Lord said, "I'm very pleased with your activities." So then the king can extract taxes, otherwise, he takes the karma of all the citizens and levies taxes. So, this is how the Shastras describe about the activities, how one can satisfy the Lord. So, with these instructions, so Swayambhu Manu was advising Dhruva Maharaj that you being great devotee of the Lord, and you have satisfied the Lord, so there is no need to engage in further killing. So with this, I conclude the class for the day. If any of you have got any questions or any comments, you can ask me. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, so if no questions or comments, I take the class as concluded. Thank you very much. Granthiraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dhanuk Nam Prabhuji.
Madai
Thank
Dandat
you.
Pranam.
Hari Bol.
Hari
Hare
Bol.
Krishna Prabhuji.